All right, welcome back to AdventureWorld in Godot. I apologize for the audio. Among the many issues that delayed this video, the biggest one was my microphone broke, and I tried some other options, but the one that I ended up going with for this is I turned my Oculus Rift upside down and I'm using the audio from it. So we'll see how it works. All right, so in this video, let's dive right in. The big thing I thought about between the last video and this one is I wasn't super happy with how we're going to move around our boss. The more I thought about it, the more of a pain I realized it would be to move it if it was a kinematic body. So what I wanted to do is instead convert it to a, I'm sorry, a kinematic body. Instead, I wanted to convert it to being a static movement. And so the reason I want to do that is I want to make a animation player. I think we can go ahead and add that here. We'll add an animation player here, and we'll use this to move it around. So for instance, I'm going to record I like to have a start or an init animation that records the location where it starts. So let's go ahead and do that. So we'll go to transform position, we'll keyframe that, and we'll store that position right there for the start. And then what we can do is we can make another one, and we'll call it drop in. All right, maybe make it a little bit longer, maybe 1.5 seconds, maybe. And we'll keyframe the start up here, and then we'll move it down to right here, and we will scoot this over, and we'll keyframe that again. Whoops. Scoot it down again. We'll keyframe that again. Right, so now when we play the drop in over 1.5 seconds, it'll drop down like that. That's a lot. Even though we're going to remove gravity from the script here, that's a lot. We have a lot more finite control over our animations now. And so we can make another one where he hops along to go over to this side, maybe he jumps up on the side, whatever. But we can control those through animations. So let's continue with that. But what I realized is the biggest problem with this is we really need a better way to control the states of the boss. And I know we put a simple state machine into here. Let's see. So what we did is we have a variable here called state, and it's just a string. And then in here we have an if statement in our process, and we say if it's this, then do this stuff. Otherwise, if it's this, then do this stuff, etc. But one of the powerful things about state machines that is commonly used is you trigger a single block of code when you switch state. So in this case, it's always going to run this when it's in this state, but I want to also be able to trigger a piece of code when that state is changed. Another problem with doing it this very simple way is this is going to get really crowded really fast when we start adding all of our different states and movements and things like that. So it's really best, or I would like to separate this out into separate files, separate script files for each state. And so I saw another YouTuber, I think it was PigDev, I'm not sure, but he had a really clever state machine where he did it with nodes. So we're going to kind of copy that idea and make a little state machine here for our spider boss. So I'm going to go ahead and create a new node, and we're just going to use a regular node. And I want this to be as I wanted this up here. I want this to be as, let's move it down, as generic as possible, so that we can use this. I can just copy this state machine over to another project and then add its states nodes and be able to reuse it. So we're going to call this state machine, and we're going to add a script to it. GD script, but we're going to do a built-in script so that it carries along with the node and create. And then here, I'm going to need a few variables. Let's see, variable current node state. And we may have to come back and clear some of this up, but I'm just kind of going off from memory right now. Let's see, target is null. And let's see. And here we will use the process. And let's see, what else will we need? We'll need a switch state function. And target state, new state. And then, let's see. Now I did do this before, and I'm going to use it for reference. I always hate when people copy paste stuff in, but I think for your sake of not having to watch me struggle through it, we'll go ahead and snag some of this. So just kind of walking through here. I'm extending node, which I've got that. I'm exporting the target path and the starting state name. Yeah, so we'll do that. I've got the target, which I've got, and the current state, which I've got. So I remembered those. I have a debug mode, which that I use for being able to display stuff and then be able to turn it off without having to change a bunch of code. So let's go ahead and do that. So we'll do export, and we'll do it of type bool. And then we'll call that is debug mode equals false. So by default we'll turn it off. And then so I'm exporting a bool called is debug variable, and I'm setting it to false. And then what we'll do is we'll use that here. Let's see, where do I use it? Right here. So if the debug mode is on, then we'll do like our print lines in our thing. And I call this debug mode on. It's probably a little bit clearer from the interface. All right, so then in the ready, let's see. We're going to find our target node, and we're going to default it to the parent. And then, right, so then we try and get that if it's set, and then otherwise we just use the parent. So right here we're going to say get set the target node and default to parent. So I don't have that target path yet, so let's do that. So it's a sing path. What was it? Apologize for having to reference this so much. Node path. Target path equals null. Oh, forgot the var. There. What was this other one? It was the name of the starting state. So starting state name equals null. All right. So now we've got the target path. So what we can do is say if target path is not equal to null, then do this stuff. And we'll do, I think we want to get the, oh, here we go. We'll just set the target to get node. So target equals get node, and then that target path that we defined up here. And I'll show you how that's going to work in just a second, but let's do the else target equals self.get parent. So that'll get the parent of the state machine, which in this case is the final spider boss. Now let's look at how this target path export will work real quick. We're not going to use it, but I think it's important to understand what it's for. And this is for, like I said before, being able to send this somewhere else in a different project and reuse it. So here, this target path, I can define this. Whoops. Oh, I didn't want to do that. What did I do? Okay, no, didn't mess it up. So I want to click this little icon here and do assign. And now I could pick where I want, what node I want to control. So in this case, you know, it might be that spider boss right there, right? And so you can't really see it there. It's got the dot dot, which indicates go up the path. But that's what that's for. Is there we go. I'm going to set it back to null. That's what that's for. Is if I wanted my state machine to reside somewhere else, and then control a node that was in another place within my scene tree, I could use this in order to do it. Now the starting state name is, I'm going to create a state under here with a node, and we're going to call this like, we'll call it init state, okay? And so this, I could call it by name here by putting init state here, like that. That's the plan, is we're going to be able to type in the name, or we can just use the first state in this child list. And that's because Godot, if I do get children, Godot returns it in the order that we see it visually here, which is super nice. So let's go ahead and do that. So then we'll set the starting state default to first, if not first. Yeah, say first. Okay, so if starting state name is not equal to null, then we'll do current state equals get. See how I did this? You could probably do child first. Yeah, there we go. But see right here, I missed this. I'm jumping straight into calling my change state function, and that would probably be the easiest. So let's go ahead and do that. And it does it by name too. So I'm taking the name as a parameter to this change state. So that'll help make this a little bit easier as well. So let's do, if it's not equal to null, then we'll change state, and we'll change it to starting state name. Else, we're going to get the first child, and we're going to call that. So change state. So we're going to call that change state again, and this time we're going to do self.get children. Oh, I think you can do get child and then pass it the index. So I'm going to get the first child, and then I'm going to pull the name property off from that and pass that into the change state. So that'll return the first child, which is this one, and it'll return this as the name property right there. It'll return that and pass it into change state. So this is change state down here. Let's go ahead and look at that. So change state, what I'm going to do is I'm going to set the new state. So I'm using new state name, so that's a little bit less confusing. So let's go ahead and do that. Name. And then here I'm going to say new state equals there. New state equals null. So I'm going to set it to null first, and then I'm going to loop through the children of the state machine and check their names. I'm going to lower it to make sure that I don't have the funny casing thing, because that would be confusing to you if you typed in the name as, you know, start or whatever, and then start state, and then, you know, your capitalization was off by a little bit, one character, and it didn't work. That would be really confusing. So by using to lower, we just lower both of those to all lowercase, and that way we'll have less problems there. And then anyways, I say if those names match, then set that state. So let's go ahead and do that real quick. So this equals null, and then for, I forgot my for statement already, in self.children, get children, then make sure I got my get children right. Yep, that's fine. So if in.name.toLower equals new state name.toLower. And yeah, you could optimize this a little bit, because what's going to happen is this is going to loop through all the children, and it's going to process lowering this one every time, even though we really only need to do it once. So you can make a variable and lower it once, and then use that variable here to save just a little bit of processing. But we're going to leave it short and sweet. And so if it equals that, then we want new state to equal in. So if they match, then we want to set that child into new state. All right, so now we've got the child node set, and I'm using an assert here just to make sure that it's a valid object. New state is not equal to null, and that just make sure new state is valid. And so the assert function will stop. Normally Godot, if there's an error, it'll just keep on trucking, which is good in most cases, because you don't want your game to crash over maybe a little code problem. But in some cases, especially as in development mode, you want it to stop if there's a problem. So that's what this is for. I'm going to use that debug mode, and let's do a print statement here. So we can say if debug mode is on equals true, then let's print. And what do we want to print? We want to print, I don't think I need these parentheses here, by the way. What are we going to print? Oh, change state. And then we can use new state name. There we go. So only if debug mode's on, we'll print, that we're changing state. Yep. And then what we're doing here is we're going to do first, before we completely change state and lose our old state, is we're going to call the state exit. And so this is one of those events that I was talking about. We're going to have an inner state as well, but we also want to have an exit state so that we can clean up anything that we need to as we move out of that state. So let's go ahead and do that. So we'll say if, and then we want to use the old state, which was this guy up here, current state. So we're going to say current state is not equal to null. So if we have a state that's currently going, then we want to say if current state has method exit state. I think that's what I called it, right? State exit. Oh, had it backwards. Then we want to call that. So we'll say current state state exit, and I'm passing the target, I believe. Yep. That way, we'll see it in a little bit when we work on a state, but that way the target knows what he's working on. Here I combined it in an AND statement. It's probably better than this nested if statement. So here, this would work, but I've got an if statement, and then I've got another if statement stacked on top of it. Whereas what I can do is actually just combine this by saying and. And I think Godot is smart enough that if this fails, it won't even consider this portion. So this function will get called if this fails. But regardless, even if it did, this would not trigger, which is the important part, unless both of these were true. So very good. Let's see. So this triggers the exit state. Now we need to do the entered state, or the transitioning into state. And let's look at what I called it. I called it state enter. So we'll snag that. So if, no, we don't even need the condition here, but we do need to check and see if the method exists. So if new state dot has method state enter, then new state dot state enter, and then we'll pass that the target as well. Okay, I think that's it for the change state. So the last thing here is this process function, and what we can do is say if current state is not equal to null and current state dot has method state process, then call the method current state process, and then we're going to pass it in the target and the delta. And the delta is this delta right here. All right. So let's check, make sure, yep, that was the same thing I did there. So this should be all done. I think we've worked through all of this. And we should be good to go. So let's close that. Now, our state machine is ready to go. Well, there's probably more we could do to it, but for our purposes here, I think we're good. I'm not sure how long this video is getting, so maybe we should speed this up. But first, let's tie in real quick a simple, we're just going to trigger an animation to start when we start in this init state. So instead of init state, let's call this drop-in state. So that's going to be the spider dropping in. And what we'll do is we will add a script to this. We can make this a built-in if we want. That's fine. We're going to scrap all of this and just have a function called state enter. I think that's what we called it, right? Down here, state enter, right? We're going to have a thing called state enter, and we're going to need our target. And here we're going to say, we actually don't even, well, yeah. So that what we're trying to get is this animation player right here. So I could either get that directly, knowing I have this this state right here is its parent is a sibling of this, or I could go to my target, which I know would be here, and then get its child animation player. So that's how I'm gonna get to it. So I'm gonna say target.get node animation player. Hopefully that should work. And this will be our equals that. And then what I can do is say anim.play, I think is the thing to start it. And what did I call this? Drop in. So let's see if that works. So what I expect to happen is we'll start up in our, oh, he's coming to get me. The reason for that is I forgot to remove the code from the spider boss. So now all of this is unneeded. Matter of fact, yeah, actually, I don't even want him to be a kinematic body anymore. What I want him to be is just an area. That way I can move it around freely without messing up the physics. And if I left him as a kinematic body, he would, even if I moved him, I think he would collide with walls and the player and stuff. And I actually want him to just be able to pass through freely if I want him to. So let's go ahead and do that real quick. Let's jump into his scene. And I'm going to change type on him from that kinematic body to an area 2D. So now you notice he changed. I still have his collision shape, and his animation sprite is fine. And so all I need to do in here is change this to an area 2D. So that's the only thing that doesn't get changed, is the script doesn't change when you use that change type. So that's important to remember. I don't need the state machine anymore. I don't need gravity. I don't need acceleration. I don't need the up vector. Don't really need the, I'll leave the ready in there just in case I use it. I don't really need any of this. I'll just do pass on there for now. Probably don't even need it, to be honest. So let's comment it out. That way, I think Godot is smart enough that it saves a little bit of performance if you're not calling things. And I don't need this. So there we go. So we've just eliminated all of our processing code for the spider boss here and moving him around, but he should still move when we drop in. So let's try that again. Try and run over quick. And he's on the ground. Let's move my player a little bit closer so that we can maybe see this happening. I'm not triggering it with this yet. We'll do that later. I just want to see him drop in. So there he comes. So there we go. So we're now animating the spider boss using animation player instead of the code like we were going to have to do before, and we're triggering that with a little bit fancier state machine that we'll be able to control better. So I think that's a pretty good place to wrap up. There's one thing I wanted to do real quick. See this found ledge? That is triggering a lot and is just flooding my output window here. Let's disable that. So I think that was under actors, and found ledge is probably one of our animals. So let's look at the snail. Just going to scroll through. Here it is right here. So if it finds a floor, it's printing this found ledge. Let's just comment that out. That way that doesn't happen. Another thing I forgot about to look at was the debug mode. So on the boss, or on the state machine I should say, already lost where I was. Here we go, state machine. We turn the debug mode is off by default. Let's turn it on so that we can see the state change. So when I play, one of the things you should see down here is state change to drop in. There it is right there. So state change, drop in state. And that was our code picking the default state and triggering it and then calling its state enter function. And we could even further improve our state machine here by whenever we call these things. So here we could do, oops, whoa, just mashing all kinds of funny buttons. So here we could do, if debug mode is on, then we could say calling state exit and give it the name of the state that we're calling it on, which would not be that one, it would be the current state.name. And then we'll do the same down here for, let's see, so debug mode, we'll do calling state enter, and that is the new state. So there we go. So now if I stop and replay, we should see our states a little bit more clearly in what's going on, which is what we want. So here we go. So we're changing the state to drop-in state, and then we're calling the state enter. And I didn't have the state exit because my state machine starts with no active state until it picks the first one. So that's why we're not seeing an exit. Now we know We called this code, and that's where that animation player started, and that's why we see, oh my goodness, that's why we see the spider fall in. All right, I'm going to wrap it up there. We'll see you next time, and we'll start to develop some more of our spiders states. I appreciate you for listening or watching, and see you next time.